Hello, today we are going to be doing about percentages. We are going to be covering percentages of amounts, calculating percentage increase and decrease, calculating interest, combining simple and compound, expressing one number as a percentage of another, and calculating original value. The first thing that we are going to be looking at is percentages of amounts. So a percentage is an amount over 100, hence why it's called percent per 100. When calculating a percentage of amount, it's always best to break those percentages down into easy parts. And remembering your easy parts in which you can break a percentage down will make your exam a lot easier to manage. So easy parts include 50%. So we do our amount divided by 2, or half. 25%, we do the amount divided by 4, or half and half again. 10%, we do the amount divided by 10, so we can do knock off a 0 in your number, or move the decimal place 1 to the left. To do 5%, we find 10% and then half it, and then 1%, we do the amount divided by 100, so we knock off 2 zeros or move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So we're going to see if we can calculate, using our little notes on the left-hand side, 50% of 60. So 50% says we should do the amount divided by 2. So we're going to go 60 divided by 2, which gives us 30, or half of 60. 25% of 40, we're now being told to do the amount divided by 4, or half and half again. So we're going to do half of 40, which is 20, and then half of 20 is 10. When we're going to do 5% of 30, so we're told to do 10% first. And to do 10%, we can knock off a 0. So 10% would equal knock off a 0, 3. And then to find 5%, we do 10% first, which we've done, and then half it. So 3 divided by 2, which then leaves us with 1.5. And then our last one is 1% of 450. Now, when we're dividing by 100, because we're working out 1%, we're told to knock off 2 zeros. But here we only have 1, so we're going to move the decimal point. So we write it after the 450, we move it twice, and then that becomes 4.5. And that is how we do our easy percentages. Okay, the next thing that we are going to look at is when we've got those percentages of amounts, how do we then work out harder percentages? So, for example, if we were asked to do 75%, we can use a combination of 50% and 25% to get our answer. Then we would add each percentage to the other, which would then equal our answer. So, for example, say we had to calculate 41% and it's made up of 4 lots of 10, and then a 1%, so 41, we'd do 10% 4 times, and then a 1%, we'd add each up, and then we would get our answer. So, for example, say we're asked 21% of 400. 21 is made up of 10%, another 10%, and then a 1%. And what I always find, if you do this little diagram next to your percentage, you'll find it much easier to then decide what you need to do with that percentage. So we're then going to do 10% of 400, which we know we're going to knock off a 0, which would be 40. We're going to do that 10% again. Now you can write it out again or just multiply your answer by 2. Just 40, and then 1%, 400, is then 4. Add it all together, and our answer is 84. Okay, brilliant. So the next thing that we are going to look at, because we're going to move away from this game for a minute, is percentage change. So, that appears to have got a little bit wrong. Sorry, guys. So we've got percentage increases and decreases. So, considering we've just worked out percentages of amounts, we can then use that knowledge to do increases and decreases. Sometimes you might be asked to calculate the difference in an amount when a percentage has been added or taken away. If you're asked about an increase, so for example, anything to do with any in addition, so for example, VAT, what we do is we work out the percentage and then add it onto our original amount. So here we are being asked 15% of 120. So we break that 15 up into 10 and 5. So 10% of 120 would be 12. And then 5% would then be half of that, which would be 6. So our whole percentage would be £18. And then we add that £18 to our original 120 because it's an additional amount. So we do 120 added 18, which then gives us 138. This then rule applies whenever we're doing decreases, but the only change is because it's a decrease, we then subtract. So Jane sees a pair of shoes priced £40 with a 20% discount. What is the price of the pair of shoes after the discount? So we calculate that 20% of the amount, so 2 lots of 10%. So 10% would be 4. We can then do 20, which would be 4 times 2, which would be £8. So that is an £8 discount Jane's got on her shoes. So then to find out what the price would be 40 take away 8, which would then leave us with 32. And 32 is our answer after our discount. Okay. So now we've dealt with simple percentage increase and decrease, we now do it in terms of interest, so anything to do with money and banking. So simple interest, we calculate by working out the percentage of the amount and then multiply by the amount of years. So if a question just asks you for interest, then you just complete step 1 and step 2. But sometimes a question might ask you for an amount after interest. So what we need to do is we need to do step 1 and step 2 and then add that to the original amount. So for example, Sally puts £200 into a savings account. It offers 5% interest. How much is in her account after 3 years? So here, this part of the question is asking you for the total. But we can't work that out until we've actually worked out what the interest is. So to work out her interest, we work out the percentage of the amount. So 5% of 200. So 10% would be 20 divided by 2. So she earns 10%, and then we multiply that by the amount of years. So she earns £10, and that would be in 1 year. So then after 3 years, that would be £30 interest she earns. So then how much would be her in her account after that 3 years would be 200 at 30. She would have 230 after the 3 years. So we worked out the percentage and then we added it on to our amount. But she only earned 30%, £30 of that as interest. Then we have another question called compound interest. And this is slightly different because what you have to do here is you have to work it out for the multiple years in which the interest is being offered. So when calculating compound interest, you work out the percentage of the amount, same as simple interest, add the percentage to the original amount, and this is where things change a little bit. You then do the percentage again of the new amount for those many years in which the question's asking you. So for example, same premise, Sally puts £200 into a savings account. Now it offers 5% compound interest. How much is in her account after 2 years? So we do 5% of 200, which we know is 10, and we find out what the amount is for year 1 by doing 10 add 200, which is 210. We then work out the percentage again for year 2. So we do 5% of now 210 because that was the amount for year 1, which is £10.50, and we add that on, which then leaves her with £220.50 in year 2. So you work it out for each year. So, for example, the number of children attending nursery in the UK is 50,000. This population is due to rise by 2% each year. how many children will be attending nursery in 2 years' time. So the fact that it says each year shows that it's compound interest. So what we need to do first is we need to work out year 1. So 2% of 50,000. Easy way to do this, we'd do 1% first, equals, take away 2 zeros, we're left with 500. And then because we want 2%, we're going to do 500 multiplied by 2, which is 1,000 children in that nursery, increased in year 1. We then add that to the amount, so we do 50,000, add 1,000, which then leaves us with 51,000 children in year 1. We then need to work out year 2. So we're then going to do 2% of now the 51,000. So 1% would be 510, and 2% would then be 1,100. Sorry, 1,020. So it'd be 1,020. And then we're going to add that to our amount. So then we're going to do 51,000, add 1,020, which then leaves us with 52,020 children in year 2. And that is how we do simple and compound interest. Then we are coming on to our next percentage question, and now the more calculator side of the exam. So here we're going to look at what we call expressing percentages, which means to show one number as a percentage of another. When we express percentages, we follow the below method. So we turn the two numbers into a fraction. So for example, 20 as a percentage of 50 would be 20 over 50. We then divide the top by the bottom. So 20 divided by 50 would give us a decimal of 0.4. And then we multiply that decimal by 100. So 20 is 40% of 50. So show you that again. We're going to express 17 as a percentage of 20. So we do 17 over 20, step 1. Step 2, we do 17 divided by 20, which I'm now going to input into the calculator. So 17 divided by 20 is 0.85, and then we're left with our decimal. So then to get our percentage, we do 0.85 times 100, which leaves us with 85%. And that is our answer. Okay, I'm going to show you that one more time with the next one. So 30 is a percentage of 80. So 1, we do 30 over 80. Step 2, we then do 30 divided by 80, which then gives us a decimal of 0.375. And then step 3, we do 0.375 times by 100, which equals 37.5%. And that is how we express percentages. Okay, the next two questions that we're going to look at are the final two questions with percentages. The first can be the most trickiest, and it's all dependent on the vocabulary that's used in the question. So finding the original value can be tricky, but you can break it down using the following rules. If your question mentions an increase, so you're looking for words like rise, addition, tax, you do 100% plus the percentage in the question. If it is a decrease, we do the opposite. So we do 100% take away the percentage decrease. And words to tell you that it is that type of question is a reduction, sale, discount. So looking at this question here, we're given a t-shirt is priced at £20 and it was reduced in the sale by 20%. What was the original price? So we're not looking for 20% of 20. We're looking at what was that t-shirt before it was reduced by 20%. So you're doing what's called a reverse percentage. So we need to find out the rule. So the rule is focused by this word reduced here. So we're going to do 100%. Now take away the percentage in the question, which is 20%, which means our percentage is equal to 80%. And then you follow the below methods, which I would like you to keep in these order to help you organise this question. So you firstly write your amount in your question, which is £20, and the percentage you've just worked out, which is 80. So now £20 is equal to 80%. And then you next do your amount divided by the new percentage amount. So 20 divided by 80, which leaves you with a decimal of 0.25. And then your last step is to multiply your answer by 100. So 0.25 times by 100 tells you that the t-shirt was £25 before it was reduced. So work out your rule and follow your 3 steps for your method. So we're going to have a now go at these two using our method and using our rule. So Sally is shopping for EYFS equipment. She sees a spring price £100. So now we've got our amount, and it's really helpful when you annotate questions, and it was reduced by 10%. So now we know it's a decrease question. What was the price before the sale? So a decrease, we do 100% take away the percentage, which is 10. So now telling us that £100 is equal to 90%. So now what we're going to do, we're going to follow our colour-coded steps. We do our amount, which is £100, equals the 90% we've just worked out. We then do our amount divided by our percentage amount. Notice the method does not change dependent on the question. It's exactly the same, which leaves us with 1.11. And then we times that by 100. So £1.11 times by 100 tells us that the swing is £111. With our decimal becomes 11 pence as well. And that is our answer. Okay, now we're going to try it for an opposite question. So now in a nursery, the staff got a 2% pay rise. So I'm going to highlight the 2% pay rise. And Oliver's salary is now £21,000 per year. So I'm now going to highlight. So now I've highlighted my percentage and I've highlighted my amount. I now have to decide on my method. So I know because it said rise, it's an increase. So now what I now do my rule for increase. So increase equals 100% plus the percentage that's increased in the question, which is 2%, which tells us my 21,000 is equal to 102%. Now I follow my exact same method. Even though it's an increase, it does not change. So I'm writing my amount equals my new percentage. I'm just repeating those rules to help me remember. So 21,000 equals 102%. Then doing exactly the same, I'm doing my amount divided by my new percentage. So 21,000 divided by 102. I'll pop that into my calculator. 21,000 divided by 102 gives me £205.88. And then my last step, as before, I'm going to multiply that number by 100 to get my 100% and to get my final answer, which my answer is then £20,588. So Oliver's salary was this before he got that 2% pay rise. And that is original value. We are then coming on to our last question, which is then called percentage change. So this, unlike the question before, you get your two numbers and you have to work out what the difference is and how that's been changed in a percentage. So when calculating percentage change, all we need to do is follow the formulas below. Difference divided by original value multiplied by 100. So that is your formula. Tells you exactly what to do. So for example, if there were 20 chocolates in a box and 12 of those chocolates were eaten, how would we work out what percentage it had changed by? So we do the difference between our original value and our new value. So 20 take away 12 is 8. We then divide that 8 by the original amount of chocolates in the box. So 8 divided by 20 gives us a decimal of 0.4. And then we multiply by 100, which gives us 40%. So the quantity in the box has reduced by 40%. Okay, So let's have a go at this question here. In 2009, the price of sending a child to nursery was £45 per week. It is now £62 per week. What is the percentage increase in price? So the first thing I'm going to write out is my formula. I'm going to do difference divided by original and then times by 100. So our difference, to calculate that, we're going to do 62 take away 45, which then gives us a difference of 17. Then I'm going to divide by 17 by my original price, which was 45, which gives me a decimal of 17 divided by 45 gives me 0.3, and this is really important to now remember, 33777. And I'm going to go to a few decimal places and then times that by 100 so you can see. So then that becomes 37.777%. We always like to give to two decimal places. And remember, because that third number is a 7, the one before would round up. So our answer is 37.78%. That's how much it has changed. And that, everybody, is percentages. So what we have now, follow this lesson back and make some notes on each of the ones. You'll also be sent revision cards to help you with these areas and a worksheet to complete.